The desert didn't want to give it to her. The mirage boiled over the horizon, making the steel silhouette breathe in and out 2 miles away. Captain Maya Kincaid lay prone on sun-baked rock, elbows burning through her pad, cheek welded to the stock of a CheyTac that felt heavier than doctrine ever said. The wind shoved at her bullet path in invisible fists. Her spotter's voice crackled in her ear. "Capt. Kincaid, this is SGT Harlan. You got 10 seconds before range control calls it. Mirage is spiking. You sure?" Her breathing rode the metronome in her head. In, out, half. Pause. A gust hissed over the crest, carrying dust and the smell of hot brass. The kestrel she'd staked in front of her ticked 2/10 left. Not stable, not friendly. The desert mocked. "Not today, girl." Over the radio, a colonel, observer, skeptic, murmured, "We can scrub it. We have the data we need." "No, you don't." Her trigger finger settled, muscles quiet. The CheyTac's bolt closed with a decisive private sound. She saw the whole long corridor of air between muzzle and target, saw heat waves like enemy hands trying to slap the round from the sky. "This is Kincaid. Shots going." She pressed. The rifle roared, a hard, clean thunder that rolled out and came back as a whisper in the valley. The recoil drove into her shoulder, familiar, punishing. She lifted back on scope. Now the long wait, seconds that tasted like metal. Would the desert laugh or swallow? She watched the distant dust halo bloom around the target. 72 hours earlier, Camp Sentinel, Western Desert. The first thing the desert did was breathe at her. It rose off the flats in slow, warped waves, like a giant animal exhaling. Maya stepped down from the tan MRAP and the heat hit her faceplate first, slid under the collar of her combat shirt, and sat heavy at the back of her neck. Camp Sentinel was nothing but T-walls, shipping containers, a squat toka, and a shooting range that seemed to point at forever. "Captain Kincaid?" a specialist called, squinting. "Range controls in the TOC. Colonel's already there." Already there. Already waiting. She slung her hard case with the CheyTac chassis over one shoulder, rifle broken down but unmistakable, and walked. Gravel popped under her boots. Generators thudded. Far out, the desert blurred into white-yellow nothing, and for a second, it was Helmand again. Same dirty light. Same dancing mirage. Same promise that the wind would turn on you when it mattered. She didn't let it in. Inside the TOS, cool air slapped her. Maps on the walls, wind roses, atmospheric charts, range fan overlays. 3 men at the table, tan uniforms, sun-reddened faces. One of them didn't bother to stand. "Captain," he said. "Silver Eagles. KOL Douglas. Didn't expect you personally. Thought the sniper cell was sending an advisor." "She is the advisor," the range NCOIC said. "Half defense, half warning." Maya set the hard case down with care. "Sir, I requested to be primary shooter." Douglas arched an eyebrow. "You did?" "Yes, sir." He tapped the weatherboard with a pen. "We're trialing a 2-mile solution in the worst atmospheric soup this austere location can produce. Today's Mirage is Class 4 bordering 5. We've got a narrow firing block because air support's using the corridor later. Not the day for volunteers. Not the day for you," the subtext added. Maya let the silence sit. Let it earn weight. "Sir, that's why I wanted to be here. I've shot in similar haze." Harlan was in the room, leaning over a laptop, headset around his neck. He looked up, recognized her, gave the smallest nod. Good. At least one friendly face. Douglas studied her like she was another piece of ballistic data he didn't yet trust. "You know we've only got limited 408 for this? You burn it, we don't get to rerun." I understand, sir. And any miss becomes a data point for the people uptown who think mixed sniper elements aren't worth the logistics. There it was. Tangible, named. Not just her ego. A whole argument about whether people like her belonged on rifles this long. She kept her voice level. Then we don't miss. The range NCOIC coughed. Maybe a laugh, maybe surprise. Harlan's mouth twitched. Douglas didn't smile. You own the result, Captain. I don't have patience for excuses about mirage or micro-bursts. She thought of Helmand and the gust that hadn't been on anyone's forecast. Of the HVT that had walked away because the bullet got nudged half a body width right. Of the after-action where the major had said wind call was optimistic, and everyone had heard she overestimated herself. Copy that, sir, she said. I'll need SGT Harlan as spotter. Harlan's slated with Staff Sergeant Peterson, Douglas said. He's been working with him all week. Maya met the colonel's eyes. Respectfully, sir, I've worked with Harlan in country. We have operational sync on long TOFs. I request reassignment. That was the turn. Small, but irreversible. She'd put preference over convenience, made herself noticeable. Douglas watched her for a beat longer than comfortable. Then, to Harlan, You good with that, Sergeant? Roger, sir, Harlan said. Captain and I read wind the same way. Douglas rolled the pen between his fingers. Outside, the desert shimmered, indifferent. Fine. You two get me valid groups today. Log everything. We brief at 1800 on whether we greenlight the 2 mile during max heat. Maya nodded. Yes, sir. As she picked up the case again, the desert glare through the TOC window seemed to pulse like it was laughing. Heat had memory. So did she. The range was a flat scar cut into the desert. Lanes stretching until the targets went from steel to shimmer to memory. Maya laid the CheyTac components out on the shooting mat like instruments before surgery. Receiver, barrel, optic, bipod, everything warm already, as if the sun had been waiting to test her too. SGT Harlan knelt beside her, notebook open, kestrel hanging. Range control says we've got 40 minutes before the air wing takes the corridor. 40's enough, she said. A voice behind them. 40's enough if you don't waste rounds. It was Warrant Mendez, test cell weapons tech. Ball cap faded, arms crossed. His eyes went to the rifle like it was his. Colonel said keep round expenditure tight. Maya didn't look up from threading the barrel. We'll log every shot. Uh-huh. Just saying, Staff Sergeant Peterson still needs to validate his dope. Be a shame if your experimentation ate his ammo. There it was again. The idea she was extra, optional. She locked the barrel, seated the optic, checked torque. Calm hands, even though her back felt hot. We're not experimenting, she said. We're mapping mirage gradients. Mendez smirked. You can't map soup, Captain. She glanced up then, met his eyes and didn't blink. You can if you have to shoot through it. Harlan hid a grin, flipped to a fresh page. Mendez shook his head, walked off toward the shade structure, muttering something about burning gold. Maya proned out, rifle into shoulder, cheek welled smooth. The CheyTac was long but balanced. It felt like purpose. Through the optic, the 800-meter steel was clear. But beyond that, 1,200, the air went wavy, the target edges breathing. The same breathing she'd seen the day the Helmand target slipped away. Not today. Wind? She asked. Harlan read the kestrel, then looked up to confirm with his own eyes. Low band 2-3 left to right. At 1K, it's building, maybe 4. Mirage running medium boil. Copy. We'll start at 8. RO was simple. Log every shot, no unsanctioned rounds. The colonel would pull the sheet later to see if she'd been disciplined. She clicked elevation, held for wind, exhaled. The desert hummed. Trigger brake. CheyTac barked. Recoil rolled. Steel rang a heartbeat later. Impact right third, Harlan said. Pen scratched. Call? 2.5 left was light. Make it 3. Logged. She sent another. Impact, but not kissing the first. Mirage thickened as the sun climbed. It pulled at the bullet in ways the computer back in the talk never showed. On a cooler day, she could have bragged this rifle stacked. Here, today, the groups would spread. And Mendez would say, "See?" She felt the prickle of that coming judgment and wanted to wait for better air. But better air wasn't on the schedule. The test was at max heat. If she learned this mirage, she owned the test. If she didn't, the desert would own her again. "We're going to 12, she said. Harlan looked at the wavering target. "Ugly picture, ma'am." "Exactly." They walked the dope out, round by round. Each time she broke a shot, she could feel Helmand behind her shoulder like a second spotter, whispering, "You missed in sun like this." Each time she forced herself to call the wind first, not check the kestrel. Desert, then device. Human, then machine. At 1-200, the Mirage was a slow boil. Her shot landed low right. Harlan marked it. "That's going to read loose, ma'am." "Log it," she said. "Note, Mirage 5, temp rising." He wrote. "You know Douglas'll say that's shooter dispersion." "He can say it." She rolled her shoulder, settled back in. "We'll have a pattern by end of day." That was the turn, choosing to keep shooting into bad air, choosing to let the paper look messy so her instincts could get sharp. No one clapped. No one shot video. It was work no one would ever see, unless she failed. By the time range control called, sweat had soaked the pads of her elbows. Her groups weren't pretty, but the notes beside them were. Mirage class, wind bands, micro gusts that came off the right ridge at 40 seconds. The desert had spoken. She'd written it down. Mendez wandered back as she cleared the rifle. Didn't look like record book groups. Maya locked the bolt to the rear. Wasn't trying to impress a book. "What were you trying to impress?" She looked past him, out at the rippling air lane where her bullet would have to fly 2 miles. "The desert." Harlan closed the notebook with a soft slap. She did. The talk felt cooler than it had any right to be. Maps, folding tables, the faint chemical smell of markers. Outside, the desert roared in heat. Inside, people pretended the world was orderly. Maya came in with her range log tucked under her arm. Harlan fell in a step behind her, carrying the tripod and his own notebook. At the far end, the range NCOIC, MSG Ruiz, was hunched over the firing schedule. 2 columns, 3 names, time blocks that were already too tight. "Master Sergeant?" Maya said. He looked up, pen between his teeth. "Captain, good work this morning. Colonel saw your groups." She couldn't read if that was praise or ammunition. "We need to lock shooter-spotter pairings for the 2-mile window." Ruiz nodded, tapped the schedule. "Already did. Peterson with Harlan, you with Specialist Kim." There it was. A clean, bureaucratic cut. On paper, it made sense. Harlan had been here longer. Peterson was in the main test lane. Kim was qualified. Sensible, but wrong. "Negative, Master Sergeant," Maya said, voice even. "I need SGT Harlan." Ruiz's eyebrows went up. "Peterson's been working with him all week." "I've been working with him in country for 3 years." Harlan didn't move, didn't cough. "Good. Let her carry it." Ruiz leaned back in the plastic chair. gave her the look old NCOs gave officers when they were deciding if this was a hill to die on. "Ma'am, this is a test event, not a unit reunion. Everybody here's qualified." "This isn't about qualified," Maya said. "It's about long time of flight comms discipline. 2 miles, we're riding the round for what? 3 seconds. Maybe more if the air's ugly. I need a spotter who'll stay in my lane, not overcorrect." Ruiz gestured with the pen. "Kim won't overcorrect. He's good. He's good inside a mile." A silence opened. Admin Marines at the other table pretended not to listen. The clock on the wall ticked too loud. Maya felt that familiar itch, the one that said, "Don't make noise, they're already watching you." She pushed through it. "Master Sergeant," she said, softer but firmer. "Colonel Douglas said I own the result. If I own it, I pick the spotter." That was the turn. She invoked the colonel. No way back now. Right on cue, Douglas stepped out of his glass-walled office, coffee in hand. "What's going on?" Ruiz straightened. "Sir, just locking pairings. Captain wants to reshuffle. She's asking for Harlan." Douglas's eyes flicked from Ruiz to Maya to Harlan. "Peterson's already worked with Harlan." "Yes, sir," Maya said. "But Harlan and I share a wind read. We already built a corridor profile this morning. If I'm shooting during max mirage, I need total spotter alignment." Douglas sipped, watching her over the rim. "Specialist Kim can read wind." "He reads it different, sir." "Different doesn't mean wrong." "In a classroom, no. At 2 miles, yes." The room tightened. Someone's radio hissed in the corner. Harlan still hadn't said a word. Good soldier, waiting to be assigned like gear. Douglas tilted his head. "You know, asking for a specific spotter looks like you need a crutch." "There it was," said out loud. Maya held his gaze. "It looks like I intend to hit." For a second, the talk was only air conditioning and tension. Douglas glanced at Harlan. "Sergeant, you comfortable with that?" "Yes, sir," Harlan said immediately. "Ma'am and I have long gun rhythm. We talk in half mils." Ruiz let out a breath through his nose, not quite annoyed, not quite amused. Douglas set his coffee down. "Fine. Peterson gets Kim. Captain Kincaid gets Harlan. But understand, you two burn ammo or miss. I'll write that you insisted on this pairing." "Understood, sir," Maya said. No apology, no smile. Ruiz made the change on the board with a squeak of marker. Name swapped. That was all. But the air shifted. That subtle recalibration that happened when a woman officer didn't back off a technical ask. As they stepped back out into the heat, Harlan fell in beside her. "You didn't have to pull me, ma'am. Kim's solid." "I know he's solid." "So why?" "Because you don't panic when the picture goes ugly," she said. "And because we're not going to get perfect air. I need someone who'll trust a non-textbook call." Harlan grinned, sun catching the sweat on his temple. "We rewriting textbooks now?" "We're writing something," she said. The desert glare hit her full on, shimmering, predatory. "I'd rather our names be on it." Behind them, through the TOC glass, she could see Peterson being told about the change. He didn't look happy. Good. Let him be mad at her. Better that than her lying prone in breathing heat with a spotter a half-second out of sync. Quiet fortitude wasn't always silence. Sometimes it was a line on a whiteboard that said, "Kincaid, Harlan." By mid-afternoon, the desert was a lens turned up too high. The air out over the lane didn't just shimmer, it crawled. Heat rose off the flats, met a cooler layer coming off a distant rise, and made the target at 1.2 miles twitch in her scope like bad video. This was the part the PowerPoints never captured. On slides, it was all neat wind roses and color bands. Out here, it was breathing chaos. Maya lay prone again, elbows dug into the mat, CheyTac settled, eye to glass. Harlan sat just off her right shoulder behind the spotter scope, mill reticle glowing soft. To their left, Peterson's team was already lined up, hungry to shoot. Range control came over the net. Sentinel firing line, you are green for long shot. Repeat, green. Peterson didn't wait. Let's send it before it cooks worse. Maya tracked the Mirage. No. Low band, left to right 3, mid band, right to left 5, high band doing its own thing. That was the trap. Crosswinds fighting at different heights. A round could launch in one wind, transition into the opposite, and land a foot off, and everyone would call it shooter error. She tasted dust in the back of her throat. Helmand had looked like this. Target clear, then not clear, then gone. She'd fired anyway. The gust had rolled in like a joke. SGT Harlan, she said quietly. You seeing that split? Affirm, he said, glass never leaving the lane. Low's friendly, mid's angry. High. Variable, can't promise it stays. Peterson called over, not on radio, just loud. Kincaid, you good? We're hot. She could have said yes. The colonel was probably watching from the talk feed, waiting to see if the female captain would hesitate. This was where careers got shaped. Small choices under boring conditions. Maya keyed her mic. Range control, this is shooter 2. Hold, Mirage and crosswind not stable. A beat of static. Then, shooter 2, say again? You are green. Hold, she repeated, sharper. Waiting for stable layer. Peterson let out an annoyed breath. Come on, Captain. It's gonna get worse. Then we don't waste data on bad air. That was it. The turn. She'd stopped everyone. She felt eyes on her from the shade structure. Felt the admin guys thinking, overcautious. Felt Douglas maybe writing it down. Harlan didn't question. He just kept watching, logging. Low band shifting 2-6, mid loosening, you called it. ROE for test said, do not fire without stable PID and confirmed environmental. She just enforced it, loudly. If the air never settled, they'd remember the hold, not the discipline. The desert breathed again. A minute, then 2. Then, like a fist unclenching, the mid-band stopped fighting so hard. The Mirage dropped from a frantic boil to a steadier wave. Not perfect, but readable. Harlan murmured, that's your window. Maya keyed up. Range control, shooter 2 back green. Copy, shooter 2 green. She settled in, exhaled to the bottom, pressed. CheyTac cracked, recoil, dust, hot smell. She stayed on glass. Far out, the steel winked with a faint impact. Harlan. Hit, slight high right, correctable. Peterson fired his, got a center hit. Of course he did, but he'd fired into air she'd cleaned. Mendez wandered over from the shade. You could have taken it earlier. Maya kept her cheek on the stock a second longer, watching the lane. Could have missed earlier too. He snorted, half conceding. You officers and your patience. She rolled clear, safed the rifle. It's not patience, she said. It's refusing to let the desert decide. Harlan closed his notebook. That hold just bought us credibility for the 2 mile, ma'am. Only if the colonel noticed. Oh, he noticed. Everybody stopped when you said stop. She stood, feeling heat roll off the ground, and glanced back at the TOC glass. Couldn't see Douglas, but she imagined him there, adding a line to her profile. Calls hold under pressure. Not impulsive. Quiet fortitude. Not dramatic, not sexy, just a woman in the sand saying, not yet. The briefing room was too cold for a desert war. Maya sat at the long table with the range logs open in front of her, pages creased with sweat from the line. On the wall, a projector threw up a windrose, a temperature chart, and a range fan that stabbed 2 clean miles into tan emptiness. Colonel Douglas stood off to the side, arms folded, while a staff captain from the test cell clicked through slides like he was selling a product, not asking a human to thread a bullet through angry air. So validation at 2,900 plus meters will give us leverage to retain sniper assets in mixed cells for Phase 2, the staff captain said. There it was, finally said out loud. Retain. Douglas nodded at Maya. Are shooters present? Everyone looked. Not hostile, just measuring. Maya kept her back straight. Sir. The staff captain smiled the way people smiled when they were glad a box was ticked. Captain Kincaid, ma'am, appreciate you being here. Your range control sheets from this morning are already in the model. Maya tapped the printed chart. You'll want to note the mirage dropped right before we fired. If you don't annotate that, it'll look like we got cleaner air than we did. Douglas's mouth twitched. She's right. Note it. The captain typed. Noted. A major on the other side of the table, ops, not range, said, Question is timing. Air, ISR, and test can all deconflict in a single window in 72 hours. After that, air takes priority for 2 weeks. 72 hours at this location, Douglas said, means max heat, worst mirage. Ops major shrugged. That's the window we have. They weren't asking. This was how hire worked. Here is the bad time, make it good. Maya flipped to her earlier Met data. Dawn inversion, midday churn, heat waves that didn't match the forecast. She could have said, this isn't how you get a clean ballistic profile. She could have said, give me Dawn. But Dawn wasn't on offer. Douglas looked at her. You said yesterday you wanted to be primary. This is what primary looks like. She met his eyes. Then we shoot in 72 hours. The staff captain nodded, satisfied. Outstanding. That gives us time to get the observers out. We've got a couple people from the directorate coming. They're specifically interested in seeing mixed gender application. Mixed gender application. Not marksmanship. Not desert ballistics. Her. Maya felt heat creep up under her collar. Not embarrassment. Something older. The feeling of being held up for display. She let it settle, then spoke. Then make sure the record shows environmental conditions. I don't want success discounted later because someone says, oh, well, it was a cool day. Ops major smirked. You expecting success? I'm expecting accuracy, she said. Success depends on what you say it is. Douglas pushed off the wall, took the clicker. Let's be clear. Uptown doesn't care if you personally can shoot 2 miles. They care if we can field people who can do it regardless of gender mix. That's what's on the line. So if I miss, Maya said, they'll say the mix was the problem. Naturally, Douglas said, not unkindly, because it's easier to blame structure than to admit conditions were garbage. Harlan, sitting at the back like furniture, said, Sir, conditions will be garbage. Douglas actually chuckled. That's why we pay you to watch wind, Sergeant. Maya looked at the range fan again. 2 miles of hostile sunlight. In Helmand, the miss had been hers. Here, the deck was stacked before she even touched the rifle. She could have pushed back, demanded a morning slot, argued process. Instead, she did the quieter, harder thing. We'll make the shot in that window. The staff captain clicked to the last slide. Then we'll circulate the report with your name as shooter. That's the important part, Maya said. The ops major frowned. The name? Yes, she said, so nobody can say it was a simulation. Douglas watched her, weighing that answer. Then he nodded once, decisive. 72 hours. Get your met data, get your zero right. Get your spotter sync. You miss. I will write every reason you said you might. You hit. I will also write every reason you shouldn't have. Either way, they see the truth. Copy, sir. As they filed out, Harlan caught up with her in the hall. Ma'am, that was a trap timing-wise. It was, she said. You stepped in. I stepped on, she corrected. They were going to walk over somebody either way. Better it's me with a rifle than a kid who can't read Mirage. Harlan grinned. Then we got 72 hours to make the desert cooperate. She looked out the narrow window at the glare. No. We've got 72 hours to learn how to stop letting it mock us. The desert was gentler before sunrise, but not kind. Maya stood on the packed earth just off the firing line, arms folded against the lingering chill. Over the flats, the horizon was a thin violet line, dunes and rocks still in silhouette. Generators grumbled low. A coyote yipped somewhere way out. Behind her, Camp Sentinel was half asleep, lights on in the TOC, coffee smell drifting, the day's heat not yet clawing its way up. Harlan came up, holding 2 mugs and the Kestrel. Ma'am? She took the mug. Black. Too hot. Good. Range control awake? They're awake. They said shoot whatever you want till 7. Air doesn't own it till then. Good. They moved to lane 2. The CheyTac lay waiting on the mat, metal cold now instead of burning. She liked it better this way. The rifle a clean thing, not the sun's hostage. Let's build the corridor, she said. Harlan spun up the Kestrel, let it sample. Huh? Huh, what? Ground level's sleepy. 1, maybe 2 knots left to right. That's fine. He raised the handheld higher, to chest, to head height. But up here it's shifting right to left, and the temp's not dropping like it should. We got a weak inversion. Of course they did. Maya looked east. The simmering edge of the sun was about to break. Once it did, the surface would heat fast, and every tidy number would start to wobble. She'd hoped dawn would give her the truth before the desert started lying. Log it, she said. Harlan wrote, 0537L, weak inversion, low band LR2K, upper band RL34K, temp 23C, rising. She knelt by the rifle and dropped prone. The world narrowed to optic and breath. The 1K target was clearer now than it would be all day. No boiling, just thin air. She could hit that in her sleep. But that wasn't the point. The point was, would the air at dawn be honest enough to model the air at 1100? She sent the first round. CheyTac cracked like a clean word in a quiet room. Impact. Center, Harlan said. Mirage nominal. Next band, she said. They walked it farther. 1200, 1400. Each time, Harlan read something she didn't like. Upper band's getting bossy, ma'am. Mirage starting earlier than yesterday. You see that little dogleg halfway out? She saw it. A faint wobble in the target picture like someone had pinched the air. A local terrain thing, probably. Some dark rock off to the right releasing heat faster than the sand. A tiny thing, but at 2 miles tiny things became misses with her name on them. She felt frustration try to climb. Why can't you just give me one clean morning? The desert, as usual, didn't answer. She rolled to a knee, looked back toward the talk where Douglas would soon be awake, wanting numbers. If she handed him a messy table, he could say, "Conditions too variable. We'll put Peterson on it." If she waited for a perfect morning, she'd still be waiting when the 72-hour window slammed shut. So she made the call. "We're shooting an ugly air," she said. Harlan glanced over. "Today?" "Test day," she said. "This is the air we're going to get. I want a solution that works in this filth, not in a textbook. Harlan didn't argue. He just wrote the line. Shooter requests to proceed despite unstable ENV. That was the turn. Not dramatic, not loud. Just a woman in the dark deciding not to wait for permission from the weather. They shot until the sun finally broke. Heat crawled over the ground. The mirage started its slow boil. Their tidy early groups opened, just like yesterday. Only this time, every wobble had a timestamp, a temp, a wind note. They weren't random anymore. They were entries in her private conversation with the desert. When range control called to say the lane was going cold for air, Maya safed the CheyTac and sat back on her heels. Sweat had started at her temples even though the day was just beginning. Harlan closed the notebook. They're going to look at this and say the data's too noisy. She looked at the pale sky, already brightening to hard blue. Then we tell them that's what the desert said. You think they'll listen? She stood, slung the rifle. Doesn't matter. We will. Quiet fortitude wasn't about waiting for perfect conditions. It was about telling the truth about bad ones and shooting anyway. By 1300, the desert was actively hostile. Heat rolled off the flats in sheets. Mirage didn't just shimmer now. It pulsed, thick, warping targets into phantom shapes. Even the steel support posts looked like they were breathing. This was exactly the hour she'd been told the real shot would happen. Perfect, Maya thought. Let it be ugly now. She lay prone, CheyTac settled, eye to the scope, and immediately hated the picture. The target at 2 miles was nothing but a pale smear on a moving background. You could barely PID it as metal. Behind her, Harlan had the big glass up, sweat shining on his neck despite the rag he'd tucked into his collar. Scope view? He asked. Bad, she said. Like shooting through a mirage waterfall. Over the radio, range control. Shooter 2, visibility degraded. Recommend postpone until later. Before she could key up, another voice cut in. Douglas, I concur. 1400 might be cleaner. Maya's jaw tightened. If she said yes now, tomorrow, when the VIPs were watching, he could say, we didn't rehearse at test hour. If she said no, she'd be the captain who ignored 2 recommendations. Harlan murmured low, for her only. We can still get value, ma'am. She keyed her mic. Range. This is Shooter 2. Request to continue rehearsal as planned. Objective is to run full sequence in current conditions. A small pause. Then Douglas, drier. Captain, explain why we're rehearsing in soup. Because test day will be soup, sir, Maya said, still on the gun. I want to fail now, not tomorrow. Someone at range control chuckled on hot mic. Douglas didn't. Fine, he said. You're on the record. Continue. That was the turn. She'd made it formal. If she crashed, it'd be her name on the line. All right, she told Harlan, voice going business flat. We're running from glass up to call out. Assume observers. Assume cameras. Harlan's pen was already moving. Copy. Timer set. Kestrel's throwing nonsense, by the way. Of course it is. They started. She called target. Harlan confirmed lane, confirmed no ground traffic, confirmed no air in corridor. She read low band wind, left to right, maybe 3. Mid band? Couldn't see it. Everything was wobble. Use the dawn profile, she said. Dawn profile was opposite halfway out, he reminded her. Then average it, she said. Desert's not going to be pure for us. This was what she wanted the colonel to hear, that she could operate in imperfection without panicking. She went through the motions. Elevation set. Wind hold decided. Breathing controlled. The sun burned the right side of her face. Sweat crept under her eye cup, stung. Behind them, boots crunched. Someone had come to watch. "Visibility's garbage," a man said quietly. "Peterson. You can't even tell if you hit." "Then you log what you can," Maya said without looking up. "That's what a rehearsal is." Peterson clicked his tongue, amused. "Or you wait for better air. Gee, that's how you get surprised on test day." She felt eyes on her. Not just Peterson's, somebody taller. Douglas probably, arms folded, seeing if she'd lose her temper. She didn't. She just kept calling. "Shooter ready," she said. "Spotter ready," Harlan said. "Send," Douglas said, making it official. She pressed. CheyTac roared, kicking dust. She rode the recoil back onto a picture that was, somehow, worse. The target blurred. Heat waves ran like water. At 2 miles, you could lose a hit in that without even knowing. Harlan leaned in, searching. "I got maybe a tick low. Hard to confirm. Mirage ate it." "Log. Impact unconfirmed. Mirage high," she said. Peterson snorted again. "See? Told you." She rolled to her side, wiped sweat with the back of her glove, then looked up at Douglas, standing under the sliver of shade. "Sir, that's exactly why we needed to run it. Now we know we won't have clean spotter confirmation at test hour." Douglas considered that. The range windsock fluttered uselessly in the heat. "And your solution?" "Spotter maintains running call even if he can't see strike," Maya said. "We trust pre-built profile and shooters break. We don't stop to argue what we can't see." Harlan tapped his notebook. "I can call the air even if I can't call the splash, sir." Peterson shrugged. "Or you could wait for—" "We don't get to wait," Maya cut in. Not sharp, just final. "They gave us this hour." Douglas's eyes narrowed, not angry, just recalculating. "You're saying we design for bad instead of hoping for good?" "Yes, sir." He let out a breath, almost a laugh. "That's the first practical thing I've heard all day." She'd won that inch. Not applause, not praise. Just acknowledgement that her way, the unfun, unclean, unbraggable way, was the one that would survive contact with real conditions. As they cleared the line, Harlan fell in. "You know you just made tomorrow harder." "Tomorrow was always hard," she said. "Now it's honest." Quiet fortitude wasn't silence. Sometimes it was a woman insisting on training in the worst heat, because that's when the shot would come. Night took the desert fast. 1 minute the range was a white glare. The next it was blue and then black. Heat bleeding off the ground in long sighs. Camp Sentinel glowed in small squares. Talk lights, chow hall, arms room. Helicopters thudded somewhere far off. Not their business. The air finally felt like it was meant for lungs. Maya sat on the low concrete step outside the barracks, boots unlaced, sleeves pushed up, her range log open on her knees. She wasn't really reading it, just looking at the hours she'd spent arguing with wind. Crickets ticked in the brush. Above, the stars were knife-sharp. From inside the barracks came voices, younger, looser now that the day was done. "I'm just saying," one of them said, too loud. "She missed a guy in Helmand and somehow she's the one doing the 2 mile? If I'd missed—" "You weren't there," another said, quieter. "Yeah, but wind is wind, bro." Maya's jaw tightened. She didn't move. If she went in now, it would become a thing. Captain walks in, everybody shuts up. Then tomorrow everyone would say she was touchy. The door opened and Harlan stepped out, closing it with shoulder instead of slam. He had a mug of whatever passed for late coffee. He saw her, saw the logbook, saw her not looking at it. He sat down beside her, leaving a respectful foot of space. "They're idiots," he said. They're young, she corrected. They're also idiots. She let out a breath through her nose. What version did you hear? The usual, he said. Target walked because wind pushed you off. Commander didn't like it. They said you overrated your own read. That's the generous version, she said. Sometimes it's, she couldn't hack desert. Harlan sipped. Wind tugged at the flag over the tokes, gentle now. The kind of wind that would have been perfect for a shot. We don't have to talk about Helmand. We do, she said. Because tomorrow everybody in that room is going to be thinking about it, even if they don't say it. Better at least one person knows what actually happened. He nodded once. He was good at that, letting silence be a container instead of a punishment. She looked out over the dark range. In her mind, it became another place. Mud walls, pale dust, Afghan sun hammering down. We had a high-value walking with 2 men. Midday. I was on the gun. Mirage wasn't great, but we had an open lane. My spotter, not you, had a good read at 450. I confirmed it. I broke clean. Half a second later, wind rolled in off a canal. Not forecast, not on any sensor. Bullet landed half a body right. Missed? Grazed, she said. He stumbled, kept moving, guardian angel kind of day. Harlan was quiet. She went on. The commander needed it to be someone's fault. Couldn't be the wind. Couldn't be that we rushed a midday shot because he wanted it now. So it was the shooter. Overconfident wind call. It followed me. Some places whispered it. Some just didn't call me back. That's crap, Harlan said, simple as that. It's the record, she said. And records win over rumors only if you make a new one. He turned a little to look at her. That why you asked for me? That's why I asked for control, she said. You, the lane, the time. I can't stop the desert from laughing. I can stop people from saying I didn't know what I was doing. A door banged somewhere. The young snipers came out, saw them, went quieter. One of them, the loud one, nodded at her, a little stiff. She nodded back. She wasn't going to make him bleed for being 22. After they passed, Harlan said, low, tomorrow, if we get a dirty hit, low, edge, whatever, I'll call it clean. You earned that. She shook her head. No. You call it exact. If it's edge, it's edge. We don't need charity in the log. He smiled, slow. That's the thing about you, ma'am. You want justice even when it cuts. I want the bullet I fired printed next to my name, she said. Not a fantasy one. He leaned back, looked up at the stars. Then let's overwrite Helmand. She felt something unclench in her chest. Not absolution, that was never coming. But space. Space to shoot tomorrow without a ghost on the stock. Thanks, Sergeant. Anytime, Captain. Quiet fortitude wasn't pretending the wound never happened. It was telling the right person at the right time, so the wound didn't steer the shot. Morning of test day was supposed to be calm. It wasn't. By 0930, the sun was already hotter than yesterday at the same hour. A skin-prickling, no-wind, oven heat. Maya stood under the narrow shade outside the TOC with the CheyTac laid out on the inspection table. Harlan had the Kestrel running in continuous mode. On the table sat the tablet running the ballistic software, cable snaking to the weather meter. Warrant Mendez hovered like a vulture. Temps jumping faster than forecast, he said. Your density altitude just went ugly. No kidding. On the tablet, the numbers slid a little. Drop, drift, tough, each recalculating, each just a hair worse. At 2 miles, a hair was a miss. Run it again, Maya said. Mendez tapped, made a face. That's the 4th run. Software says at this DA you need more elevation and a bigger right hold than yesterday. Mirage isn't even standing up yet, she said. That's a projection. It's the computer, he said, the way people said it was scripture. It eats the met. It spits the truth. Harlan raised the kestrel higher, letting it taste air above head height. Top band's warmer than ground by, damn, 2 degrees already. That was backwards. The desert was heating top down instead of bottom up because of radiating rock somewhere out there. It meant layers were going to shear at different rates. It meant the computer would keep chasing numbers while her bullet flew through air that changed mid-flight. She pulled her notebook from her cargo pocket and flipped to the dawn pages. Yesterday's ugly data, the one she'd insisted on gathering. Bands, temps, weird little dogleg halfway downrange. Human handwriting, not software font. Mendez glanced at it and snorted. You're not actually trusting that over this, are you? She looked up at him. That handwriting is this range. That tablet is a model of a range. He raised his hands. Hey, you're the shooter. I'm just telling you, when you make a manual deviation, Test wants to see it. Good, she said. Then they'll see it. That was the turn. She'd said it out loud. She picked up the tablet, scrolled to the environmental override, and copied the computer's solution into her notebook, then wrote under it. Shooter deviates. Use our 100L profile plus 0.3 mil add for expected mid-band rise. Initial wind based on observed, not computed. Harlan whistled quietly. You're going to make Douglas read that twice. He said he wanted truth, she said. Mendez shook his head. Or you could just wait an hour. Let the air stabilize. Shoot when it calms. We don't own the hour, she said. We own this one. He sighed, stepped back. When it prints weird, don't blame my gear. If it prints weird, she said, I'll blame my call. Inside the tuck, through the glass, she saw Douglas, watching. He came out, coffee in hand. Problem? Not a problem, sir, Maya said. Environment's swinging outside program parameters. I'm logging a manual solution based on yesterday's dawn and this morning's rise. Douglas eyed the tablet. You're overruling the computer? I'm clarifying it. That's a good way to get blamed if you're wrong. She met his gaze. I'd rather be blamed for a decision I made than one the desert made while I hid behind software. For a moment, he just considered her. Then he nodded once. Log it. Make it legible. Uptown hates messy handwriting. Harlan grinned and underlined the note for clarity. We'll write like adults, sir. Douglas went back in. Maya exhaled slowly. The fear was still there. Not of the shot, but of the after-action. The one where someone in a cool building said, why didn't she just use the system? Quiet fortitude meant accepting that critique in advance. She closed the notebook. All right, she told Harlan. We shoot as if the air is going to lie. We trust what we watched, not what it promises. Harlan slung his scope. Then let's go make the desert tell the truth. The ops tent was louder than usual. Too many radios, too many people who didn't shoot talking about shooting. Maya ducked inside, helmet off, notebook under her arm. A map board dominated the center. Air tasking order, ISR orbits, range usage, all layered like Tetris pieces over the same stretch of desert. Cauldron Douglas stood with the ops major and the test cell captain. Everyone looked a little too satisfied, which meant they'd made a plan without the person who had to pull the trigger. Douglas saw her. Captain, good. We're locking the window. Outstanding, sir, she said. 1100? 1330, the OPS major said, like he was doing her a favor. She stared at the board. 1330 was circled in red, right in the heart of the day. That's peak Mirage. Yes, the major said. That's also when air is off station, ISR is in dead time, and range safety can give us an uninterrupted corridor. Which is also, she said evenly, when the shot will be hardest. So don't miss, the major said, not unkindly, just done. Maya looked to Douglas. Sir, we've built profiles for late morning. Go 930 1100, we can extrapolate, but at 1330 we lose spotter confirmation. Douglas nodded. I heard your rehearsal yesterday. You already said you wanted to design for bad, not hope for good. He'd listened and weaponized it. She breathed once, slow. The easy, proud thing would be to fight, to dig in for 1100 to say, I won't shoot in trash. But then they'd get someone else on the gun, and the narrative would be, she refused. Okay, she said, we'll shoot at 1330. Ops Major clicked his pen, marked it, final. Great, that lets us stack the VIPs. Of course. They wanted the Mirage because they wanted the audience. On one condition, Maya said, 3 pairs of eyes turned. I want shooter authority to call a single abort inside that window, she said. Not range, not ops, shooter, 1 abort only. The major frowned. We can't have you waving off in front of VIPs. You can, she said. Once. If the air collapses, it collapses. You can film me saying abort. It'll look like discipline. Better than filming a miss in heat shimmer. Douglas rubbed his jaw, thinking. Range safety already has authority to terminate. I'm not arguing safety, she said. I'm arguing effects. You're asking me to thread around through boiling air in front of an audience. I need 1 lifeline. Ops Major looked to Douglas. Sir, if we give her abort, we lose deconfliction if she pushes too long. I won't push too long, Maya said. I understand you own the corridor. I just want the option to wait 60, 90 seconds for a band to settle. Douglas watched her, measuring again, always measuring. Then he nodded once. 1 abort. Shooter authority. You call it on the net, it's honored. That was the turn. She'd taken the bad hour, but bought back a sliver of control. Thank you, sir, she said. The test cell captain added, Just be advised, ma'am, VIPs are coming out specifically to see the shot. I'd prefer we not make them stand in the sun too long. Maya met his eye. I'd prefer we not make the bullet fly blind. He flushed, looked back at his tablet. Douglas stepped closer to the map, tapped the red circle. Here's how it plays. 1325, you're on the gun. 1330, we go hot. If you see a bad wave set, not just I don't like it, but an actual bad set, you call abort 1. We hold. 1332 or 33 you send. Copy, Maya said. And, Captain, Douglas added, tone cooling. Once you've used your abort, there is no second. If the air's still trash, you shoot in trash. I understand. He eyed her a moment longer. You need to understand something else. Uptown thinks today is about proving range. It's not. It's about proving repeatability across personnel. They're going to look at you, at your gender, at this environment, and decide if it's practical or expensive. They will not factor in that we gave you the worst hour. I know, she said. That's why I asked to log every deviation. Good, he said, because you will not complain afterward. I won't complain, she said. I will report. That earned a faint smile. There's a difference. Yes, sir, she said. Complaints are emotional, reports are ammunition. The ops major chuckled. She's gonna write us all up. If you give me the data, I'll defend the shot, she said. If you don't, I can't. She left the tent with Harlan, who'd been waiting outside. The sun hit like a wall, the exact sun she'd have to shoot under. He shaded his eyes. "We get the time we wanted?" "No," she said. "We got 13:30. He winced. "That's cruel." "We got one abort." He brightened. "That's generous." "It's not generous, it's survival." They walked toward the line. The desert shimmered ahead, already starting its midday dance. Maya pictured herself prone, cheek on stock, an audience behind her. If the air heaved sideways, she'd have one chance to say, "Not yet." Quiet fortitude today would not be dramatic. It would be a woman's voice on the radio, steady, in the worst hour of the day, saying, "Abort one." By 13:25, the desert was a mirage factory. Maya was already prone, body aligned behind the CheyTac, bipod dug in. The mat under her felt hot through her sleeves. Her cheek rested on the stock, left hand feathering the rear bag to bring the reticle right onto a target she could only half see. Behind her, in a skinny line of shade, VIPs in sunglasses and sleeves rolled, watched like this was a demo. Cameras, binoculars, folding chairs, all for a bullet that might or might not thread the dance. Harlan was just off her right, spotter scope up, knee braced. Sweat had flattened his hair. "Ma'am," he said low, "air's dirty." "I see it," she said. Out at 2 miles, the target swam. Heat waves ran left to right down low. Good, but halfway out a bright shimmer cut across opposite like a river of glass. And on top, faint but real, a push from right again. 3 layers arguing. Range control came over the net. "Camp Sentinel test shot, you are green." Another voice, the test cell captain, extra professional for the audience. "Shooter 2, you are clear to fire at your discretion." Her discretion. And yet her hour, their crowd. She breathed once, tasting dust. This was how Helmand had felt. All eyes, bad air, hurry up. Harlan's pencil hovered over his notebook. Low band 3 left to right. Mid band 4 right to left. High band 2 right to left, but flickering. Flickering was spotter speak for "I don't trust it." She checked the Kestrel reading taped to the stock, then ignored it. It could only tell her what was here, not what was out there. Behind them a voice murmured, "Peterson. Just send it." She blocked him out. Colonel Douglas keyed in, voice cool. "Shooter 2, conditions acceptable?" She could have said yes. Shot now. Let the desert laugh. If it hit, she'd look fearless. If it missed, they'd say, "Well, it was ugly, what did we expect?" Either way, they'd be done. But that mid-band was wobbling like a drunk man. A bullet would launch in friendly wind and then get slapped sideways halfway through the marathon. She remembered her own words in the ops tent. "If the air collapses, I will say abort." Maya keyed up. "Sentinel, this is Shooter 2. Abort 1, repeat, abort 1, mid-band unstable." The range went quiet. Even the VIPs seemed to lean in. Abort in front of an audience wasn't glamorous. It looked like doubt. Range control. Copy, Shooter 2, abort 1, holding corridor. Ops, be advised, corridor hold 3 minutes max. Douglas came back, not angry, just confirming. "That's your single abort, Captain." "Affirm, sir," she said, "waiting for stable layer." She felt the eyes. The test cell captain would be wondering how to write that into his report without making the schedule look stupid. Peterson would be smirking. Somewhere uptown, someone would later ask, "Did she hesitate?" Harlan didn't smirk. He just watched. "Good call," he said under his breath. "That cross would have eaten it." She kept her eye on the scope, kept breathing, let the heat hiss around them. Her heart wanted to run. "That's it. You spent it. Now you've got nothing." But she didn't let it. There was the air, and there was the shot. Everything else was noise. Seconds crawled. The desert shimmered. Then, like a curtain settling, the mid-band's wild sideways sway eased. Not perfect, just readable. The top band still nudged right to left, but consistent now. Harlan. Ma'am, that's as good as it's gonna get. Log it, she said. Time 1328L, mid-band stabilized. He wrote, fast. She keyed up. Sentinel, shooter 2 back green. Range control, copy, shooter 2 green. Douglas. Then send it, Captain. This time there was no more buffer. No more lifeline. She'd spent her discipline coins. Whatever the desert did now, she would have to shoot through it. She settled deeper behind the CheyTac, feeling every gram of it. The sultry heat in the metal. The expectation in the air behind her. She thought of Helmand, of a bullet nudged right. She thought of every time someone had said, she missed once. She thought of every woman who would get, or not get, a rifle slot because of the data today. Quiet fortitude didn't always look brave. Sometimes it looked like a woman saying, abort, with a steady voice while a whole camp watched, and then staying on the gun. The abort bought her 90 seconds. 90 seconds for the sun to keep hammering the flats. 90 seconds for the air to decide whether it would be merciful or mean. Mostly, it chose mean. Maya stayed on the gun, cheek welded, watching the long, wavering lane. The target was a pale plate at the end of the world, breathing in and out. The desert seemed to say, you think you can touch this from here? Behind her, someone shifted in the VIP line, bored already. That was the problem with quiet discipline. It didn't look good on camera. Harlan's voice came low, steady. Low band holding 3 left to right. Mid band's calmed, but it's hot. Expect uplift. High band is 2 right to left, consistent. Logged? She asked. Logged. Her tablet pinged with a fresh environmental update from the TOC. Some helpful soul pushing the newest computer solution to her. On the corner of her scope view, the tiny number fed to her from the device said, more elevation, more right. It was wrong. It was wrong because it didn't know about the dogleg halfway out. The heat-bloated rock face off to the right that she and Harlan had noted at dawn. It didn't know the corridor like she did. It only knew theory. The desert, catching her hesitation, mocked her again, thickening the mirage so the target wobbled, as if to say, you don't know me. She felt the old phantom of Helmand slide up behind her shoulder. That one officer's voice. Wind call was optimistic. The unspoken part. You should have let the equipment decide. She breathed it out. 1, 2. Harlan, she said, we're dumping the tablet dope. Roger, he said instantly, like he'd been waiting for her to say it. You want the 600L profile with the 0.3 ad? Affirm, she said. And I want the mid-band correction we saw at 1.4 yesterday. He flipped pages, fast, efficient. Got it. That'll put you slightly left of what the computer wants. Good, she said. Computers never lain on this dirt. Behind them, Mendez called from under shade, half warning, half cover your ass. Captain, test cell pushed you the updated solution. I received it, she said, not looking up. You deviating? He said, loud enough for Douglas to hear. This was the moment. If she said no, she could always blame the software later. If she said yes, she was naked. I'm deviating, Maya said. Shooter will fire on manual, lane-specific solution. Douglas keyed the net from the VIP shade. Deviations must be recorded. They're recorded, sir, she said. Time 1329L. There. Lock clicked shut. No going back. Harlan leaned in, voice for her alone. This is the shot that overwrites Helmand. It's the shot that tells the truth, she said. She watched the lane again. The mid-band stayed behaved. Still hot, still rising, but no longer slapping sideways. The high band nudged right to left, so the bullet would want to drift left near the end. Her hold would have to anticipate that, not chase it. She rolled the dial, fine, tiny movements. Elevation, wind. The CheyTac felt warm against her face, like a live thing. Her pulse had slowed. There was no room now for shame, only physics and the woman applying it. Wind call, she said. Harlan recited it, crisp. Shooter hold, elevation is set, wind 1.2 right for low, favoring 1.4 for mid. Expect left push high. Ride it, don't correct mid-flight. That last part wasn't in any manual. That was two people who had watched this lane for 2 days. Copy, she said. The desert shivered again, testing her. It was almost funny, as if the land itself couldn't believe she'd fire through this. She keyed the net, voice steady, officer clear. Sentinel, this is Shooter 2. Final solution locked, shots going. She felt the whole range tighten, the way people did right before an explosion. VIPs leaned forward. Someone's phone came up to film. Peterson stopped smirking. Harlan said, soft, "Send it, ma'am." Quiet fortitude, in the end, wasn't a speech or a yell. It was a woman in a furnace choosing her own numbers over everyone else's and telling the world she did. The world narrowed to reticle and breath. Maya's finger took up the slack, the way she'd done 1,000 times on shorter guns in friendlier places. Here, at 2 miles, it felt almost obscene to think it could be the same motion. But it was. Same human. Same squeeze. What changed was the air between. She exhaled to the bottom, pressed. The CheyTac roared, a hard, deep report that slapped the hot air and rolled downrange. The rifle drove straight back into her shoulder, clean, no wobble. Dust leapt around the muzzle. Behind her, the VIP line flinched like one body. She rode the recoil, stayed married to the scope. No headlift, no celebratory move, just glass. Out there, the bullet began its long, stupid journey through hostile sky. Time of flight. Harlan murmured, counting for both of them. 1, 2, 3. Each second felt like a year. In that slow stretch, every doubt tried to get in. What if the high band lied? What if the dogleg heated more since dawn? What if the computer had been right and you just wanted to prove you were smarter? 4. The target swam in and out with the mirage. She tightened her jaw, refused to blink. The desert made the steel look liquid. She imagined the round punching through that liquid like a thrown coin through bathwater. 5. Now. It should be now. A faint, almost delicate puff bloomed around the target plate. Not dramatic, not movie big, just a specific, meaningful disturbance in the shimmering heat. Harlan snapped, professional and loud. Impact! High left edge! Repeat, impact! High left edge! Observable! The relief hit her like a slow, warm wave. Not a cheer, not a shout, just the knowledge. It landed. In this air. At this hour, on this lane. Behind them, the VIPs started clapping, uneven, surprised. Someone said, "Holy, did she actually?" Cameras swung back to her. Mendez punched the air once, then tried to look like he hadn't. Maya kept her cheek on the stock. "Log deviation and result," she said, voice steady. "Manual solution, 0600L based. Produced, hit at 1330L under high mirage. Impact high left, repeatable." Harlan was already writing, fast. "Logged. We can shave 0.1 off wind for repeat." Range control came on, excitement barely hidden. "Shooter 2, we copy impact at test range. Well done." Colonel Douglas keyed in, drier but not cold. Shooter 2, confirm. That was on your manual, not the pushed solution? Affirm, sir, Maya said. Shooter fired manual, lane-specific call? A pause, then. Understood. We'll annotate. That was the real victory. Not the clap behind her. The word, annotate. Peterson muttered from the shade, not quite grudging, not quite admiring. Hell of a round, Captain. She rolled clear of the rifle, sat back on her heels. Heat rushed her face. Her elbows ached from hours of prone. Her shirt was stuck to her spine. But somewhere under all that was the quiet, heavy satisfaction of having told the desert, I see you, and still hitting. Helmand rose up, old and dusty, and then it wasn't a wound anymore, just a line on a timeline. Back then, the air had lied, and the commander had needed a scapegoat. Today, the air had lied, and she had refused to let it be the excuse. Harlan offered his fist. She bumped it, small, not performative. You rode over it, he said. We rode over it, she corrected. The VIPs started chattering about footage. The test cell captain was already talking about proof of concept. Ops wanted to know how fast they could get the report out. Everybody was loud. Maya looked back downrange at the still-breathing target 2 miles away. The desert was already erasing the little dust signature, pulling the scene back into shimmering anonymity. Quiet fortitude meant accepting that. You hit, and the desert pretended you didn't. So the paperwork had to remember. The ops tent felt even colder after the furnace outside. Maya stepped in, still hot from the line, helmet under her arm, rifle handed off. The air conditioning raised goosebumps on sweat-damp skin. Inside, people were already pivoting from spectacle to paperwork. Screens showed a freeze frame of the shot lane, grainy, mirage blurred. A printer clattered. The test cell captain was hunched over a laptop, typing fast. Colonel Douglas stood over him, coffee gone, posture looser than earlier. The posture of a man whose event had not blown up in front of VIPs. Captain Kincaid, he said without looking up. Nice work. Thank you, sir. The test cell captain glanced up. We've got impact at 2 miles in the preliminary. I'm drafting a line about environmental being favorable, Douglas suggested. Maya felt that word land like a slap. She set her notebook on the table and opened it to the right page. Sir, environmental was not favorable. The captain blinked. Well, I mean, stable enough to... No, sir, she said. Not sharp, just precise. We fired at 1330 L under high mirage. Triple band cross. Shooter exercised single authorized abort for mid-band instability. After abort, mid-band stabilized but remained hot. That is not favorable. Douglas looked at her fully now, measuring whether she was about to make this combative. She didn't. She just held out the notebook. The captain took it. Read. You unlogged every mirage change. Yes, sir. Even the abort. Especially the abort. Douglas took the notebook next. The deviation? Timestamped 1329L, she said. Manual lane-specific solution based on 0600L profile plus 0.3 mil add for expected mid-band rise. I stated deviation on the net. Sergeant Harlan logged it. Harlan, just inside the tent flap, lifted his own notebook in silent confirmation. Douglas nodded slowly. So Uptown will see you didn't follow the pushed solution. Yes, sir. They may ask why. They can read the Met, she said. If they can't, I'll explain it. The captain typed, lips moving as he put it into bland test language. Maya watched his screen. If he wrote it soft, this would all become Shot achieved under acceptable conditions. Shooter used alternate solution. That was how real things vanished. Recommend you add, she said, that shooter accepted highest heat window at command request. The captain hesitated. That's process detail. It's test fidelity, she said. Otherwise, the narrative becomes Desert was cooperative. Desert was not cooperative. Shooter was. Douglas's mouth twitched, grudgingly impressed. Put it in. The captain sighed, added the line. Maya felt the hot urge to say more, to point out the VIPs, the cameras, the way she'd had to burn her only abort in front of everyone. But that would turn this into a victory speech. Victory speeches were easy to dismiss. Emotional, female, overcompensating. Reports were harder to kill, so she kept it dry. Also, sir, request the video clip include Mirage demo before and after abort. Otherwise, the hit looks cleaner than it was. Douglas nodded again. Fair. We don't want anyone thinking we staged it. Exactly, sir. The captain finished the draft and hit print. Warm paper slid out. He passed it to Douglas, who scanned, then signed with a fast military flourish. He handed the sheet to her. This goes up. Your name is on it. If they argue with math. Good, Maya said. The tension in her chest loosened. Math doesn't care who pulled the trigger. Douglas looked up, eyes a little softer. For what it's worth, Captain, you did the thing. Even if they spend the next week explaining why it was easier than it looked. It wasn't, she said. I know, he said. That's why I wanted it written. Outside, applause had already faded. Desert had gone back to shimmering like nothing exceptional had happened. That was fine. The desert didn't keep records. She did. Quiet fortitude was this. Walking into the cold tent right after the big moment and making sure the paper couldn't forget. By late afternoon, the sun had slid off its brutal angle and turned everything gold. The T-walls, the trucks, even the empty firing lane that, a few hours earlier, had been a stage. Now it was just sand and heat ghosts and the faint clank of someone policing brass. Maya sat on the hood of a Humvee near the range, boots on the bumper, notebook open. The CheyTac was already back in the cage. Her name was already on the report. The noise was over. Harlan walked up with 2 bottles of water, tossed her one. You look less like you just fought the desert. I did fight the desert, she said, twisting the cap. It just didn't file a complaint. He laughed, short. Then he tipped his head toward the range. They're still talking about it. VIPs want the clip. Mendez is claiming partial credit. Peterson's pretending he always believed. Let him, she said. Let everyone. He eyed her. You're not gonna celebrate? This is me celebrating, she said, lifting the water. In quiet. They sat like that for a beat, watching the heat drift over the lane. Out there, 2 miles away, the target was just a suggestion now. The desert had swallowed the evidence, just like she knew it would. Harlan said, softer, You know what I liked best? What? You burned your abort in front of everybody and didn't flinch. Most people would have tried to look cool. She remembered the line in her ear. Shooter 2, you are green. And her own voice. Abort 1, repeat, abort 1, mid-band unstable. The moment the whole camp watched to see if the woman would blink. It wasn't about looking cool, she said. It was about getting the bullet there. Yeah, he said, but it taught them something. She flipped the notebook to a blank page, wrote at the top in block letters, Desert Long Tove Training Notes, Sentinel. Harlan watched. You heading out with that? No, she said. I'm staying. He raised an eyebrow. I figured you'd ride the win home. Good exit. Good exits let the story get told wrong, she said. If I leave, it's she got lucky in bad air. If I stay and teach, it's this is how you do it in bad air. He nodded slowly. Pay it forward. Pay it back, she corrected. To whoever comes in here next and has to prove she belongs on a long gun. From the TOC direction, Douglas walked past with a folder under his arm, talking to the ops major. He saw her, gave the barest nod, not a salute, not a cheer, just professional acknowledgement. The kind that meant, you did what you said. We'll keep the slot. When he was gone, Harlan said, you think they'll actually use the mixed element now? They've got data now, she said. Data with a woman's name on it. That's harder to delete than rumor. She kept writing, neat, methodical. Shoot Dawn even if ugly log every Mirage shift build lane profile, not theoretical shooter may call abort once trust. Human red when environment diverges, then underlined. Desert doesn't hate you. It just won't help you. Harlan chuckled when he read it over her shoulder. That a class title? It's a briefing, she said. For the next captain they send out here with people watching and too little time. Wind came in cooler now from the west. Not the hard, mocking midday gusts, just an honest breeze. It tugged at her sleeves, lifted the edge of the notebook. She let it. For the first time since Helmand, desert wind didn't feel like a personal enemy, just a variable. She looked out to where the target had been, and in her head replayed the moment. The Mirage boiling, the corridor shimmering, her voice on net. This is Kincaid. Shots going. Same words as earlier, but now they weren't a dare. They were a statement of capability. Quiet fortitude, she realized, wasn't the shot. It was everything before and after. The holds, the notes, the calm corrections, the insistence on the record, the choice to stay. She capped the pen. Tomorrow we start a course, she said. Harlan grinned. Who's the course for? Anyone who ever got told the desert was too much for them, she said, and especially the ones who didn't even get invited because of it. The sun dropped lower. The range glowed. When the sun finally slipped behind the ridgeline and the range turned from gold to copper, Maya understood the thing she hadn't been able to name since Helmand. The desert had never been about punishment. It had been about truth. In Helmand, the truth was that a commander rushed a shot and blamed the nearest expendable person. Here, at Sentinel, the truth was that a woman officer in the hottest, ugliest hour read the air better than the computer and put a bullet where the desert said it barely belonged. One truth had humiliated her. The other restored her. Both went into the same file. That mattered more than applause. Because applause fades with the dust. Records stay. She thought about the young sniper in the barracks, repeating a half story because it was the only one he'd been told. Men didn't wake up wanting to doubt women. They woke up with the stories they'd been handed. So she'd given them a better one. Not she missed once, but she forced command to honor an abort, fired in trash air, deviated from software, and still hit. That story was harder to weaponize against the next woman. That was the point. Her victory wasn't cinematic. There was no slow-motion shout, no colonel hoisting her arm, no anthem rolling over a triumphant desert. It was procedural. It lived in margins, in the line that said, Shooter, Captain M. Kincaid, in the note that said, Test conducted 1330L under severe mirage, in the signature that said, Deviation acknowledged. Quiet fortitude is like that. It doesn't chase the spotlight. It rewires the paperwork. It says, write it the way it happened, even if it makes your plan look worse and my decision look stubborn. It says, I will take the cost now so someone else doesn't pay it later. And this was the cost. Embarrassment on the net when she called abort 1. The sideways looks from men who thought she'd flinched. The risk of being the shooter who overruled the machine. But what she gained was bigger. The right to say, calmly, to any skeptic in any future room, we've done this before, under worse conditions, with a female shooter. Here's the data. That is how cultures move, not with speeches, but with logged results. As the desert cooled, she closed her notebook and let herself feel the small, private satisfaction of a thing done clean. Not perfect. The hit was high left, never center, but clean, honest, earned. A center hit might have let them say the air was kind. An edge hit under bad air forced them to say the shooter was good. She preferred that. She imagined another woman, months from now, stepping off an MR app into the same heat, being told by some warrant, yeah, this range is rough, but Kincaid did 2 miles here. That woman would start higher than Maya had. That was the real shot. The bullet at 2 miles had been for the mission. The paperwork had been for the institution. The quiet insistence, the holds, the deviations, the refusal to let anyone call it favorable, that had been for every woman who ever had to prove what should have been assumed.